This video is part 2 of Vitreous anatomy, and I'm going to read it from Wolff's Anatomy 8th edition. It's chapter 13, page number 447. The microscopic structure of vitreous. The vitreous has the following components. 1. Cortex, which is further divided into 4 parts: anterior hyaloid, vitreous base, posterior hyaloid, peripapillary and perimacular attachments. Second, central vitreous, and third, vitreous cells. Cortex, central vitreous and vitreous cells. And cortex will be studied under 4 parts: anterior hyaloid, vitreous base, posterior hyaloid, peripapillary and perimacular attachments. Cortex. Clinically, the term cortex is applied to the dense broad zone up to 0.2 or 0.3 mm in width adjoining the retina. Eisner or Eisner has also used the term posterior cortex for this zone, while adopting the term anterior cortex for the very thin zone corresponding to the anterior hyaloid of the clinician and lying external to the preretinal tract. Eisner, 1982, regards the central vitreous as lying internal to this tract and further subdivides it into intermediate vitreous between the preretinal and retrolenticular tracts and retrolenticular vitreous that is lying internal to the retrolenticular tract. Many authors, however, use the term cortex from the outer vitreous zone at any site. Microscopically, the cortex is regarded as the outer 100 to 200 micrometer of the vitreous and is formed by a condensation of its constituent fibrils, cells and glycosaminoglycan. Its fibrils are in the region of 12 nanometer wide and insert into the internal limiting membrane of the retina posteriorly, blending with the basal lamina of the Muller cell or with the basal lamina of the ciliary body epithelium anteriorly. In places such as vitreous base and margin of the disc and macula and overlying the retinal vases, a firm bond is achieved, which is strong in youth and weakens with age. Elsewhere, the attachment is loose. In healthy young eyes, the attachments between the Muller cell membranes, basal lamina, and cortical collagen fibrils are so strong that if vitreous is pulled away from the retina of the cell membrane of the Muller's cell breaks, while the basement membrane remains attached to the vitreous fibrils and the cell membrane. The thickness of the basal lamina varies between 20 and 100 nanometer and is thicker over the posterior part of the retina except at the fovea and optic nerve head. This thickness increases with age and may reach 3 micrometer in width. The basal lamina serves partially as a barrier to large molecules and may in part prevent macromolecules of 7 nanometer or over from entering the vitreous across the retina. The continuity of the basal lamina is interrupted at the pars plana and at the ciliary processes. At these points, vitreous fibrils are in direct contact with the cell membranes of the epithelial cells. It appears that these breaks in basal lamina increase with age and basal lamina fragments may be found in the cortical vitreous in adult eyes. The condensation at the vitreous surface does not constitute a distinct hyaloid membrane but does constitute a fragile envelope which is present everywhere except just anterior to the vitreous base. The zonular cleft of Salzmann. So what is the zonular cleft of Salzmann? The condensation of the vitreous surface, it doesn't constitute a distinct hyaloid membrane but does constitute a fragile envelope which is present everywhere except just anterior to the vitreous bit. Just anterior to the vitreous base, there is no condensation of the vitreous surface as distinct hyaloid membrane, and that is called as the zonular cleft of Salzmann, okay, near the vitreous base, anterior to the vitreous base, just anterior to the vitreous base, and at the area of Martegiani. Again, it's Martegiani or Gianni, I don't know. I searched for its pronunciation on YouTube, internet, how to pronounce Martegiani, but I didn't get. So if anyone knows, let me also know, but I don't know how because I'm on YouTube and I don't know how to share. Via link you can share in the comment section. how to pronounce Martegiani or Gianni, I don't know. Okay. Salzman recognized anterior and posterior limiting layers, which are now termed the anterior and posterior hyaloid. They extend to the margins of the anatomical vitreous space. The anterior hyaloid. The anterior hyaloid is a portion of the vitreous surface that stretches forward typically from the anterior margin of the vitreous base at the ora serrata. Its epicellary portion passes anteriorly to reach the ligamentum hyaloideo-capsular. Central to this, its retroradial portion is thinned and less distinct. Clinically, the epicellary portion may be seen with a slit lamp microscope to be floating freely to a variable extent in some adult eye. Thus, it may run from the edge of hyaloideo-capsular ligament to the coronal ligament to the mid-pars plana region to the ora serrata or to some intermediate point. Alternatively, it may be in contact with and adherent to the most posterior fibers of the zonule. The retroradial portion is less distinct but may be seen more clearly after the extracapsular lens extraction when the posterior capsule flattens and loses its posterior curvature. Using specific staining techniques and a certain amount of traction, fibers may be detected in vitro, running from the anterior hyaloid to the other structures such as the valleys between the ciliary processes, the hyalociliary zonule. There are also 3 circular sets of zonules which are attached to or traverse the anterior hyaloid. These are the retroradial ligament corresponding to the ligamentum hyaloideo-capsular, the coronary ligament whose fibers run circumferentially across the inner face of the posterior third of the ciliary processes, and the median ligament whose fibers are also circumferential at the level of the midstern of the pars plana. The fibers of these so-called ligaments are interwoven into the anterior vitreous cortex and give off radial fibers to the ciliary body or lens. Their relationship to the vitreous tracts has already been mentioned. The collagen fibrils of the anterior cortex are arranged in compacted lamellae parallel with the plane of the pars plana ciliaris and woven into a mesh-like structure. The vitreous base is a broad band of vitreous condensation and attachment which runs circumferentially from a 0.2 mm anterior to the ora serrata and to a 0.2 to 4 mm behind it. So what is the attachment of the vitreous base? 2 mm anterior to the ora serrata to 2 to 4 mm behind the ora serrata, and it runs circumferentially. So 2 mm anterior, 2 to 4 mm behind, so around 4 to 6 mm width of vitreous base, and it runs circumferentially. Anterior to the ora serrata, the vitreous fibrils blend with the basal lamina of the non-pigmented epithelium of the pars plana ciliaris, while behind it they blend with the internal limiting membrane of the retina. This provides a firm bond of attachment over the retinal surface. They are organized as groups of tapering bundles which pass out into the vitreous substance approximately at right angles to the retinal surface. More anteriorly, the fibers are finer and fan out towards the lens. Collagen fibrils at the vitreous base are wider than elsewhere in the cortex in the region of 45 nanometer. At the vitreous base in the aging eye, small crypts may be found between the molar cell foot. At the level of internal limiting membrane, here vitreal fibers may perforate the inner limiting membrane and in many cases fill the crypt. Traction on the vitreous base may create a retinal tear, the forerunner of a retinal detachment. The most established portion of the vitreous base is a narrow band overlying the ora serrata. In infancy, it is said to lie just posterior to the ora. With age, the vitreous base broadens anteriorly and posteriorly, having a relatively straight course temporally, where the oral bays are flattened, and a more wandering course nasally, where the bays are most marked. There are also racial differences, with the vitreous base lying more posteriorly in the African and Chinese. So what they are saying here, with aging what happens? In infancy, it is said to lie just posterior to the ora, and it is a narrow band of attachment, and with age, it broadens anteriorly and posteriorly. And there are racial differences for the vitreous base attachment, and this vitreous space, it lies more posteriorly in the Chinese and African people. The posterior hyaloid. Just posterior to the vitreous space, the fibrils of the vitreous cortex curve backwards along the inner retina as thin layers which pass towards the central vitreous. Posterior to the equator, the fibrils blend with the inner limiting membrane of the retina. These fibrils are more readily identified in fetal eyes. The peripapillary and perimacular cortex. The peripapillary cortex is firmly united to a narrow zone of marginal retina 10 micrometer wide at the edge of the disc. This is where the Muller's fibers and associated inner limiting membrane end. A similar but less dense attachment to perimacular retina occurs. Both attachments are more developed in young eyes. So, vitreous is firmly attached to the peripapillary area, perimacular area, and overlying the retinal vessels and vitreous base. Central vitreous. The general structure of the central vitreous is like that of the vitreous cortex. However, cells are infrequent and collagen fibrils are sparse and do not insert into peripheral structures, obviously because they are central. So, throughout the vitreous substance, collagen is probably loosely bonded to the hyaluronic acid ground substance. Ballatz proposed that the large molecules of hyaluronic acid maintain a physical segregation of collagen filaments and hence maintain a high degree of optical transparency. With age, this framework breaks down so that in the adult central vitreous, the collagen fibrils become aggregated in parallel bundles that coalesce to form macroscopic fibers. So in this paragraph, what they are saying, central vitreous, the general structure is similar to that of the vitreous cortex, okay, but the cells are infrequent and collagen fibrils are sparse, obviously because the cortex is denser than the central vitreous, okay, vitreous cortex, it is denser than the central vitreous. So obviously the collagen fibrils there are sparse and infrequent cells, vitreous cells. Okay, so it is made up of the hyaluronic acid and collagen is loosely bonded to the hyaluronic acid ground substance. Okay. And large molecules of hyaluronic acid maintain a physical separation of collagen filaments and hence maintain a high degree of optical transparency. So we know that the causes of corneal transparency, then how the aqueous humor is kept transparent physiologically, like the vessels are not leaky for the proteins, and how the aqueous humor is formed, and it means during its formation the proteins are not leaky, and iris vessels, they have tight junctions and they are not leaky to maintain the transparency at the aqueous humor level. So behind that, why the lens is transparent, that also we'll see in the anatomy of the lens. Okay, later on after the anatomy of the ciliary body and choroid, I'll talk about the anatomy of lens. In that also we'll see in detail how the lens is transparent. And now this vitreous. Now this vitreous, how it is kept transparent, because there is hyaluronic acid and is large enough to separate the collagen fibrils and maintain the optical transparency. Okay. And with age, this framework breaks down so that in the adult central vitreous, the collagen fibrils become aggregated in parallel bundles that coalesce to form macroscopic fibers. Okay, it's floaters and all that we see because of the vitreous degeneration, vitreous analysis. Okay. So they're talking about that. With aging, what happens? This ground substance hyaluronic acid, it breaks down, and what happens? So the separation of the collagen fibrils is not enough. They aggregate to form the macroscopic fibers. Okay. So then vitreous cells or hyalucytes. So vitreous cells, hyalucytes. Okay. Vitreous cells or hyalucytes. Cells are present only in the cortex, adjacent to the retina and ciliary body. The central vitreous and cortex adjacent to the lens and posterior chamber are completely cell-free in normal adult eyes, obviously to maintain the optical transparency. Cells are most prominent at the vitreous base and also cortex, and most prominent at the vitreous base over the optic nerve head or in relation to the retinal vessels. Firm attachment. Near the firm attachment, that is the vitreous base overlying the optic nerve head, and in relation to the retinal vessels, these cells are more prominent is halocytes, vitreous cells. The vast majority of cells are mononuclear phagocytes, macrophages called halocytes. So halocytes are mononuclear macrophages. Okay, mononuclear phagocytes, also known as macrophages, called halocytes. Some fibrocytes and various glial cells may also be found. So vitreous cells are mainly halocytes. These are mononuclear macrophages, mononuclear phagocytes. Then second, fibrocytes and glial cells are found in the vitreous. And these are more prominent at the vitreous cortex, especially at the vitreous base and peripapillary area and overlying the retinal vessels. And it is the cell-free zone adjacent to the lens and the posterior chamber to maintain the optical transparency. Halocytes. The halocytes are phagocytic cells which contain many lysosomes, some phagosomes and a prominent Golgi complex. They have an affinity for neutral red, show an intense red autofluorescence, and possess large electron-dense inclusions. They have been demonstrated to have phagocytic properties in vivo and in vitro, and hydrolytic enzymes have been found in their lysosomes. They are capable of synthesizing hyaluronic acid. In the normal vitreous, the halocytes form a resting population in the cortex, usually not in contact with the basal lamina. However, with inflammation of the vitreous, their numbers increase and they may be found in the central vitreous and also penetrating the basal lamina in their passage to and from the retina or ciliary body. In such situations, the macrophage population is expanded by other cells of monocytic origin or after retinal damage or retinal pigment epithelial cells. Okay. Now, composition of the vitreous. The vitreous is 99% water and its volume is about 4 ml. 4 ml, 99% water. The liquid phase of vitreous gel contains hyaluronic acid and it is this high molecular weight proteoglycan 33 to 61 kDa, I forgot this what it stands for, but anyway 33 to 61 kDa, which is responsible for its characteristic high viscosity. The concentration in human vitreous is 0.03 to 0.1%. The molecular diameter of the hyaluronic acid is in the region of 0.1 to 0.5 micrometer. The vitreous contains a fine fibrillar collagen, relatively resistant to trypsin and alpha-chymotrypsin but digested by pepsin and collagenase, which is different from that found in the ocular coats or lens capsule. Biochemically, it is type 2 collagen and has a moderate sugar content, though lower than that of the basement membrane collagens. These 9 and 11 collagen are also present, so it's mainly type 2 collagen. Okay, so remember it's hyaluronic acid, 99%. The volume of the vitreous is 4 ml, 99% of the water, then hyaluronic acid, then it's a proteoglycan, and it is made up of fibrillar collagen, and obviously collagen is resistant to trypsin and alpha-chymotrypsin, to which the elastin fibers are susceptible, and collagen fibers are susceptible to collagenase and pepsin, to which the elastin fibers are resistant. That we have seen in the chapter where I discussed Marfan syndrome and Lenson ciliary problems. So, and then it is made up of the type 2 collagen, also type 9 and type 11 collagens are also present. Then the collagen fibers are coated with glycosaminoglycans, stainable with ruthenium and red, and removed with hyaluronidase. Okay. The composition of vitreous is in other respects similar to that of aqueous, apart from quantitative and regional differences, and there is a free diffusion of water between the vitreous and aqueous compartments. However, the movement of large solid molecules across the vitreous is restricted by its gel-like structure, and this may influence the distribution, delivery, and removal of drugs and other materials into and from the vitreous body. Now, aging and vitreous detachment. Once again, I'll talk about the composition of vitreous in short. Its volume is 4 ml. Composition is hyaluronic acid, 99% water. Hyaluronic acid holds large molecules of water. Okay, so it is made optically transparent. Then it has got the It's made up of the type 2 collagen, and type 9 and type 11 collagen is also present. Then hyalurocytes are present, cells are present, ground substance. So once again, 4 ml volume, 99% water, hyaluronic acid, type 2, 9 and 11 collagen fibers. And composition of the vitreous in other respects is similar to that of aqueous apart from the quantitative with regional differences, and there is a free diffusion of water between the vitreous and aqueous compartments. However, the movement of the large solid molecules across the vitreous is restricted by its gel-like structure, and this may influence the distribution, delivery and removal of drugs and other materials into and from the vitreous body. Obviously, because we don't want proteins and lots of cells in the vitreous, because then it will interfere with its optical transparency, so we don't want these molecules. So it is impermeable to the protein molecules, large molecules relatively, okay, and it doesn't allow the diffusion or the movement of the large molecules, but it allows the free diffusion of the water between the vitreous and aqueous compartments, okay. And this is very important because it will help us to understand the entry of drugs, distribution of the drug, delivery of the drug, entry mode of the drugs from the vitreous. And actually, as it is gel-like material, the drugs will persist for a longer time in vitreous than the anterior chamber. Okay, the removal will take time, the entry will take time. Aging and vitreous detachment. In the young eye, the vitreous appears to be relatively empty optically on slit lamp biomicroscopy. With increasing age, a wheel-like scattering of light may be seen which undulates with movements of the eye. This is presumably due to an alteration of the gel structure, but the fibrillar appearance is not caused by a visibility of collagen fibrils, which are of molecular dimensions. In old age or in the younger myopic eye, a breakdown in structure occurs, as indicated by increased scattering properties and the appearance of optically empty spaces, syneresis. Syneresis, it is a part of vitreous degeneration. It's like vitreous degeneration, age-related mostly. And in that process, we see lots of cavities, empty spaces. The altered gel may collapse so that its outer surface pulls away from the internal cords of the eye, which is detachment. This detachment of vitreous is facilitated by the weakening of adhesion between the vitreous and structures external to it, that is the internal limiting membrane of the retina. So what is vitreous detachment? It is a separation between the vitreous cortex and the internal limiting membrane of the retina. And this detachment, it occurs with age. Detachment may merely split the internal limiting membrane of the retina at the points of attachment of the vitreous, may separate vitreous from the internal limiting membrane, may split the cortical vitreous, or may at times tear the retina itself, leading to a retinal hole. This event may be a precursor of retinal detachment. Actually, you should understand vitreous detachment process. It is age-related, vitreous degeneration, empty spaces, vitreous separation from the internal limiting membrane, and sometimes whenever there is, when it is strongly attached to certain underlying structures, when it gets detached there, it can put the retina underlying that, okay, and it can create the retinal holes or retinal tears, which are the precursors of the retinal detachment. So vitreous detachment may be regarded as a normal consequence of aging and is frequently found in otherwise normal eyes in old age. It is usually precipitated by the formation of a hole in the posterior vitreous phase, which may come about when the vitreous separates from its normally strong attachment around the macula or optic disc. Macular optic disc. Hole formation. Retinal hole formation. Hole formation in the posterior vitreous phase. The fluid central vitreous can pass posteriorly through such a hole, while the posterior halar phase. The fluid central vitreous can pass. In this situation, the fluid central vitreous can pass posteriorly through such a hole, while the posterior halar itself moves forwards. Posterior halar, that membrane cortex, it moves forwards, and the central vitreous, it seeps through that hole. So that was all about the vitreous anatomy, vitreous composition, and vitreous degeneration, and the differences in the vitreous anatomy as per the age, as per the aging process. So figures. Figure 13.12. Schematic view of vitreous attachments. In young eyes, the vitreous face is adherent to the posterior lens capsule. In the region of the hyalogenic capsule ligament, arrows, the vitreous body is firmly attached solid line to about a 2 mm zone of the pars plana 1 and continues posteriorly to about 4 mm width of the peripheral retina. 2. The dotted line is in contact with the posterior zonular fibers. Posteriorly, the vitreous face is attached at the edge of the optic disc. 3. Although not as firmly as the vitreous base, a similar annular attachment 3 to 4 mm in diameter is seen in young eyes at the macular region. AC for anterior chamber, CC for Cloquet's canal, M for space of Martigiani. So that was about figure 13.12. So it's showing the vitreous attachment 2 mm anterior and 2 to 4 mm posterior to the ora serrata, and strong attachment to the vitreous base. It is strongly attached to the internal limiting membrane, underlying internal limiting membrane at the vitreous base, anterior to the optic disc, then macular area, and overlying the retinal vessels. Now figure 13.13. Vitreoretinal junction in various zones of the retina are nucleated from a woman aged 45 years with orbital tumor and optic atrophy. A. Region of the ora serrata. B. Equatorial region. C. Intermediate region. D. Posterior region. E. Fovea. Margin of the pit. E. Fovea. Fovea margin of the pit. F is fovea, center of the pit. G. Overlying a retinal vessel at the posterior pole. The inner limiting lamina progressively increases in thickness from the periphery towards the posterior pole. So the inner limiting lamina progressively increases in thickness from the periphery towards the posterior pole of the retina. Extreme thinning is found at the center of the fovea and overlying vessels. So internal limiting membrane thinning overlying the fovea and vessels. The inner limiting membrane is separated from the cell membrane of Muller by an electrolucent zone. This laminar space is crossed by fibrils that increase in number at the site of densification in the surface cytoplasm of Muller cells. Attachment plaques, original magnification A to E 23,000 times, F 20,000 times, G 19,800 times. Figure 13.14. The biomicroscopic appearance of the hyalociliary zonular fibers and retrolental ligament in a patient of 62 years after intracapsular cataract extraction. The ciliocapsular and hyalocapsular zonular fibers were restricted. The hyalociliary zonular leaf then became visible at the anterior hyaloid membrane (AVM), connecting the circular zonular fibers of the retrolental ligament (LR) to the ciliary body. More posteriorly, the ligamentum coronarium (LC) with the tractus medianus (TM) are seen at the ora serrata (OS). The preretinal tract (TP) is inserted. The posterior hyaloid membrane (PVM) is detached, and an exception at this age is inserted just behind the ora serrata. The ora serrata. L for accessory ligament, SL street light. Okay. Figure 13.15. Dark field horizontal optical section of posterior vitreous in a 56-year-old human, demonstrating the premacular large and to the right PM and prepapillary holes PP in the posterior vitreous cortex. So in this diagram they are showing the holes in the perimacular and prepapillary area. Premacular and prepapillary area. Figure 13.16. Schematic representation of cholangiofibrils and sodium hyaluronic acid molecules in gel vitreous. So hyaluronic acid molecules are larger, they hold large amounts of water, and to these fibers, collagen fibers are loosely attached in the vitreous cortex, and that helps to maintain the distance between the collagen fibers, and this arrangement, it maintains the optical transparency, especially of the vitreous. Obviously this arrangement is in the vitreous, so lens is transparent, anterior chamber, posterior chamber, aqueous humor is kept transparent physiologically, even the cornea is kept transparent. It is the arrangement is such collagen fibers, regular arrangement, equispaced arrangement, and their diameter, they all contribute to the corneal transparency, its avascularity. Okay. Now figure 13.17a, phase contrast microscopy of flat mount preparation of hyalurocytes in the vitreous cortex from the eye of an 11-year-old girl obtained post-mortem. Mononuclear cells are distributed in a single layer within the vitreous cortex. B. Higher magnification demonstrates the mononuclear round appearance of these cells. Pseudopodia are present in some cells. Figure 13.18. Cells in the cortical vitreous at the surface of the posterior retina. A. Migratory cell with pseudopodia and vacuoles. B. Round cell rich in intracytoplasmic filaments. Then figure 13.19, preparation of the human vitreous from a 79-year-old subject. The sclera, choroid and retina have been dissected from the midzone of the globe but remain attached posteriorly above. A fringe of retina is present overlying the vitreous base and ora serrata is seen. The fibrillar structure of the vitreous is well seen by dark field illumination. Figure 13.20, dark field horizontal optical of vitreous in an 88-year-old human. The overall structure is collapsed syneresis. Fibers are tortuous, aggregated and thickened. Large lacunae of liquid vitreous are seen peripherally. So that was all about the vitreous anatomy. I didn't repeat so many things, but in short, actually vitreous is quite boring for me. Okay, and it's a small chapter, and whatever I can recollect, the important points from the vitreous anatomy are, see, first thing, vitreous anatomy, why it is kept optically transparent. Okay, so its volume, it's 4 ml. Then its composition, it's 99% of the water. Then it is made up of the hyaluronic acid, ground substance, which is a proteoglycan, and it's a large molecule. It holds large amount of the water, and the collagen fibers are attached to that thing. Peripherally, the vitreous is thicker, and centrally it is thinner, because though the general structure is similar, but centrally the collagen fibers are sparse, and more collagen, and centrally the collagen fibers are sparse, and even the vitreous cells are usually absent, especially posterior to the lens and in the area of the posterior chamber, to maintain the optical transparency. These are the reasons why the vitreous is kept transparent, especially around the optical axis. So that was the chemical composition of the vitreous, and anatomically the gross appearance, and it's a gel-like consistency, transparent, with a naked eye. Okay, then you should know the vitreous tracts: retrolental tract, coronary tract, median tract, and then pre-retinal tract. The retrolental tract, that is attached to the margin of the patellar fossa, it extends posteriorly to the center of the vitreous. Then second thing is coronary tract. Okay, then coronary tract, it arises from the ciliary processes, overlying the ciliary processes, the area overlying the ciliary processes, posterior to the vitreous cortex, and then the median tract from the middle of the pars plana, posterior to the vitreous cortex, and then pre-retinal tract from the ora serrata, posterior to the vitreous cortex. And these tract, this arrangement, actually it collapses with aging. That was all about the vitreous tracts. Then what we saw was the vitreous phases. Okay, the Cloquet's canal. It is the hyalid artery remnant. Anteriorly, it continues to the Berger space. Actually, it is continuous, means there is the anterior limiting membrane, and then it continues to the Berger space. It is the space in the patellar fossa, it's the capillary space that separates the lens from the anterior hyalid face or and then posteriorly it continues as the Cloquet's canal. The Cloquet's canal, the posterior part, the phonetic part that is overlying the optic disc is called as area Martigiani. Now you tell me how it is pronounced, Martigiani or Martigiani. Okay. Then that was about the vitreous spaces, Hylo, Canal of Petit, Canal of Hanover. That also you should know. Canal of Petit is between the hilar zonule and posterior or post-equatorial zonular fiber, and Canal of Hanover is between the anterior and posterior zonular tracts. Okay. So that was about the vitreous anatomy, and microscopically the vitreous is divided into vitreous cortex, then vitreous cells and central vitreous. Okay, so vitreous cortex, vitreous cells and central vitreous. So vitreous cortex, it is dense. It is made up of the collagen fibers, compact arrangement of the collagen fibers and ground substance hyaluronic acid. It is then the vitreous base attachment. Vitreous base, how it is attached? It is attached 2 mm anterior to the ora serrata and 2 to 4 mm posterior to the ora serrata, and it runs circumferentially. That is the vitreous base, and it is firmly adherent to the underlying structures. Okay. So then comes the vitreous cortex, the anterior hyaloid face. Actually, it is comparatively thinner than the posterior hyaloid face. Now, anterior hyaloid face, it is nothing but the vitreous cortex that is condensed anteriorly, and it is thinner comparatively in comparison with the posterior cortex, vitreous cortex or posterior hyaloid face. Okay. Now, this vitreous cortex, it is firmly adherent at 4 points mainly: vitreous base, then prepapillary area, then premacular area, and overlying the retinal vessels. Now that was all about the vitreous cortex. Then comes the vitreous cells, hyalocytes. These are mononuclear phagocytic cells which are known as macrophages. Okay, also glial cells are there and fibrocytes are there, but these are more in the vitreous base, vitreous cortex, papillary area, prepapillary area, and overlying the retinal vessels. These are most prominent, and these are relatively absent or very few behind the lens, that is in the retrolentral zone, and posterior to the posterior chamber, while so to maintain the optical transparency of the vitreous. So that was about the vitreous cells. Now central vitreous, as I said, it is mainly made up of the hyaluronic acid. It has got the same composition like the vitreous cortex, but the hyaluronic acid molecules are more and collagen fibrils are sparse, so it holds more water. It is more liquid. It has the gel consistency, but as compared to the vitreous cortex, it is more like a liquid. Then the hyaluronic acid molecules are larger. They keep the collagen fibrils in the center, at the center of the vitreous. These are sparse and these are attached loosely to the hyaluronic acid. These are hyaluronic acids holding a lot of water, and they have the high molecular weight, and they separate these collagen fibrils or fibers, okay, to maintain the optical transparency. And this arrangement, it maintains the optical transparency. Also the hyalocytes, these are relatively absent in the central vitreous to maintain its optical transparency. And with aging, what are the changes in the vitreous? So in infancy, the vitreous base attachment, it is posterior to the ora serrata, and it broadens with age anteriorly and posteriorly. Then with age, what happens? These hyaluronic acid molecules in the vitreous, their structure collapses. So what happens? These hyaluronic acid, keeping the collagen fibrils or fibers separate, these fibers, they aggregate together and they form the microscopic bundle of fibers. So, and also there is separation of the vitreous cortex or posterior hyaloid face from the underlying internal limiting membrane, and that separation is called as vitreous detachment. Sometimes what happens, this process, it causes retinal tears and retinal holes, which are precursors of retinal detachment. Okay, and then syneresis. Syneresis means syneresis means there is an appearance of empty spaces in the vitreous, especially in the premacular and prepapillary area. With aging, it happens, this change happens, and this liquefaction of cortex and thickening of the central vitreous, aggregation of the collagen fibrils, and these empty spaces where the liquefied cortex is there. Sometimes when the vitreous detachment occurs and the hole is there, that empty space is there, to that this liquefied vitreous, it escapes posteriorly, and the vitreous detachment, this membrane, the vitreous detachment, this posterior halide face that is detached from the internal limiting membrane, it comes to anteriorly, and the liquid cortex, liquid central vitreous, it seeps through that hole posteriorly. Okay, so that was all about the vitreous anatomy and age-related changes in the vitreous. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently. Next video, I'll be talking about gonioscopy. I just wanted to finish vitreous first, and I wanted to make the gonioscopy video first, but I read Irving and it's beautifully given there. Everything is given in Irving's glaucoma, and it's a very simple language. In standard books, it's like a little bit hi-fi English language. So I read gonioscopy from Jacobi and then Shields, and Irving's recently I read. So I'm gonna read first from each book, the gonioscopy, and first I'll read from Shields, then I'll add some points from the Irvings and also some pictures and videos. Then I'll read it from Jacobi and Irving, okay, as a revision of gonioscopy. So I have finished this vitreous anatomy. Tomorrow, if time permits, if I can collect all the videos and pictures of anterior chamber angle in different types of the glaucoma, if I can complete that work tomorrow, by tomorrow evening, I'll make the gonioscopy video, otherwise the day after tomorrow. Thank you for listening to me very patiently. Good night and take care.